The pen trembled in Daniel's hand, ink bleeding into the paper like a wound. He stood in the sterile boardroom, its glass walls reflecting the Manhattan skyline, as the lawyer's voice droned on about clauses and signatures. His wife, Elise, sat across the table, her eyes fixed on the documents, her fingers laced tightly in her lap. She hadn't looked at him once. Not a glance. Not a flicker. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself held its breath, waiting for the moment to shatter. Daniel signed his name, the scratch of the pen deafening in the silence, and with it, he handed over his stake in her family's company, the empire her father had built, the one she swore to protect. He thought he was saving their marriage. He didn't know he was signing its death warrant. Daniel had always loved the way Elise moved through their penthouse, her bare feet whispering against the hardwood, her laughter a melody that could pull him from the darkest moods. They'd been married 7 years, their life a tapestry of late-night talks, shared dreams, and the occasional storm they always weathered together. But the past year had been different. Subtle cracks had formed, her late nights at the office, her phone angled just out of his sight, her smiles that never quite reached her eyes. He told himself it was stress. Her father's death had left her as the reluctant CEO of Hartwell Enterprises, a real estate juggernaut teetering under economic strain. Daniel, a professor of literature with no head for business, had trusted her to steer the ship. He loved her too much to question the shadows in her gaze. Yet the signs were there, needling at his subconscious. The way she'd linger at the window, staring at the city lights as if searching for something, or someone. The faint scent of cedarwood cologne on her scarf, a fragrance he didn't wear. The way her assistant Marcus seemed to hover too close during company events, his hand brushing her elbow. Their laughter a private code Daniel couldn't crack. He'd dismissed it all, chalking it up to paranoia. Elise loved him. She'd said it just last week, hadn't she? Her voice soft, almost pleading, as she pressed her lips to his forehead. "You're my anchor, Daniel. Always." The boardroom decision had come after months of tension. Hartwell Enterprises was bleeding money, and Elise had proposed selling a majority stake to a rival firm, Crestview Partners. Daniel's shares, inherited from her father as a gesture of trust, were the final piece needed to seal the deal. "It's the only way to save the company," she'd said, her voice steady but her eyes glistening. "If we don't act now, we lose everything." He'd believed her. He always did. The night before the signing, they'd lain in bed, her head on his chest, her fingers tracing circles on his skin. "This is for us," she whispered. "For our future." He'd held her tighter, ignoring the faint tremor in her voice, the way her body seemed to pull away even as she stayed close. Now, in the boardroom, the papers were signed. The lawyer gathered the documents, offering a curt nod before leaving them alone. Daniel waited for Elise to speak, to bridge the chasm between them. Instead, she stood smoothing her blazer, her movements precise, almost mechanical. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, her tone clipped, like a stranger closing a transaction. She walked to the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor, and he felt it, a jolt, like a string snapping inside his chest. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. That evening, Daniel sat in their penthouse, the city's hum muted by the thick windows. Elise was at another meeting, her absence a familiar ache. He poured a glass of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the light, and opened his laptop. He didn't know what he was looking for, maybe a distraction, maybe an answer. His fingers moved on instinct, logging into their shared cloud account, one they used for bills and photos. There, buried in a folder labeled Taxes, was a file he didn't recognize, Crestview_deal_draft.pdf. Curiosity tightened his throat as he opened it. Pages of legalese scrolled by, but one section stopped him cold. A clause, buried in fine print, outlined a transfer of assets, not just company shares but personal ones. Their savings, their investments, all redirected to an offshore account in Elise's name alone. His breath hitched. This wasn't a sale to save the company. It was a siphon, a betrayal orchestrated with surgical precision. He scrolled further, his heart pounding, and found emails forwarded to the same folder. Messages between Elise and Marcus, her assistant. Not just professional exchanges, but intimate ones. "Meet me at the usual place," Marcus wrote. "I can't stop thinking about you. Elise replied. And then the dagger. Once Daniel signs, we're free. The money's ours. The words blurred as his vision swam, the bourbon glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. When Elise returned, the penthouse was dark, save for the glow of Daniel's laptop. He sat on the couch, the emails open, his face a mask of devastation. She froze in the doorway, her purse slipping to the floor. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice cracking. "What are you doing?" He looked up, his eyes raw, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why, Elise? Why him? Why this?" She stepped forward, then stopped, as if an invisible wall stood between them. "It's not what you think," she said, but the lie crumbled in her trembling hands. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Marcus." He understood the pressure, the company, everything I was carrying. "You were always so distant, lost in your books." "Distant?" His voice broke, rising with anguish. "I gave you everything. My trust, my love, my name on those papers. And you used me to steal it all." Tears streamed down her face, but they felt hollow to him now. "I was trying to save us," she said. "The company was collapsing. Marcus had a plan to rebuild, to start fresh. I thought we could have a new life. With him." Daniel spat, the word venomous. "You sold our life for him." She sank to her knees, sobbing, but he couldn't move toward her. The woman he'd loved was a stranger, her betrayal a blade lodged in his chest. He stood, his legs unsteady, and walked past her to the door. "You wanted freedom," he said, his voice cold. "You have it." Days later, the news broke. Hartwell Enterprises collapsed under the weight of mismanagement and fraud. Crestview Partners, a shell company orchestrated by Marcus, vanished with the funds. Elise was left with nothing, no company, no money, no Daniel. He read about it in a cafe, the paper trembling in his hands, her name in bold print. The empire her father built was gone. And so was the life they'd shared. He'd trusted her, loved her, signed the papers that sealed their ruin. And as he sat there, the city buzzing around him, he wondered if the real betrayal was that he hadn't seen it coming. Or that, even now, a part of him still loved the woman who'd destroyed him.